Good day, everyone. I'm Sir Renan, your oral communication in context teacher. Our previous discussion focused on the nature of communication. We were able to define what communication is and differentiate verbal communication cues from nonverbal communication cues, as well as its types. For this video, we will be focusing on the process of communication. Communication is a process that begins with the sending of message from a source or the speaker to a destination or the receiver who gives a feedback or a reply. This video lesson is an example of communication as a process. I am the source, the speaker, and you, my students, are the receivers or the destination. Only that you cannot give a feedback or a reply. But during the face-to-face classes, feedback is very possible to be given. This process is continuous because the moment the feedback is sent to the original source, the persons involved in the communication situation constantly exchange roles, thereby starting the entire process all over again. So how does this process become continuous? This process becomes continuous the moment the receiver of the message chooses to give a feedback. Tapos yung speaker kanina na nauna, sasagot din. And they will constantly exchange roles as the speaker to the receiver becomes the speaker to the receiver again, then that receiver becomes the speaker, and so and so. So it becomes continuous. Just like in a one-on-one interview between the interviewer and the interviewee. I have here an illustration of the said process with a corresponding sample communication situation. To explain further what this process is all about, we have here the process of communication. The process begins with the speaker generating an idea. So it begins with a stimulus. Ano bang pag-uusapan? Ano bang gusto mong itanong? Ano bang impormasyon ang gusto mong ibigay o i-share? So that's the beginning of the communication process. Then, the speaker encodes an idea or converts the idea into words or actions. Encoding meaning converting that idea or stimulus into words, patanong, or maybe an action. The speaker transmits or sends out the message. How does the speaker transmit or send out the message? It may be face-to-face, it may be through the use of online platforms, phone call, and many other forms. The receiver or the destination gets the message. So after getting the message, the receiver decodes or interprets the message based on the context. Decoding has to do something with interpretation. Iintindihin mo, ano ba ang sinabi, ano ba ang naisiparating sa iyo ng speaker? Base doon sa konteksto, what is it all about? Then the receiver sends or provides a feedback. Again, you may or you may not provide or give a feedback. But if it's needed to give a feedback, then do so. Here is an example, a communication situation. The speaker generates the idea. An example goes, Yen loves Paulo, her suitor, as a friend. So that's the main idea. That's the stimulus. In the second process, she thinks of how to tell him using their native language. It has to do something with encoding. Gamit ang kanilang vernacular or native language, sasabihin niya kay Paulo kung anong nararamdaman niya para sa kanya. Third process, she tells him, Paulo, mahal kita bilang kaibigan. That is her way of transmitting or sending out the message. Face-to-face siya, or pwedeng face-to-face, o pwede online niya sinabi through chat. Then, Paulo hears what Yen says. So the receiver gets the message. The receiver is Paulo. The next process, he tries to analyze what she means based on the content in their relationship. And he is heartbroken. So the receiver, Paulo, interprets or decodes the message base dun sa konteksto tungkol sa pag-amin ni Yen kung ano ba ang nararamdaman niya kay Paulo that resulted to being heartbroken with. And the last process of communication is that he frowns and does not say anything because he is in pain. Maybe hindi siya nagbigay ng verbal feedback, pero yung kanyang malungkot na mukha is really a manifestation of what he is really feeling that moment. But the moment Paulo gives the feedback or responds to what Yen told him, that the process becomes continuous. Sasagutan na sila, sagutan na, exchanging roles na. Paulo becomes the speaker now, then Yen becomes the receiver, and vice versa. In the process of communication, noise is unavoidable. In fact, noise is always present in every communication situation. And we are all aware of what noise is. Noise is anything that affects or distorts the message in the communication process. That's why si Sir Renan dito nagre-record sa classroom, away from the faculty room, away from other people, para maiwasan itong hindrance na to or something that distorts or might affect my way of giving this video lesson. But noise is not just about the sounds that are distracting or affecting us. This comes in different forms, namely, we have here the different forms of noise. First form of noise is a physical noise. Physical noise refers to the common sounds that distract the communication situation. Yung ingay, hindi kayo nagkakarinigan because of that particular noise. That is a physical noise. Honking of cars along the streets, the buzzing of the electric fan, the loud voices of people in your surroundings. Physical noise. Another form of noise is the physiological noise. This stems from the body and may tend to distract the people involved to properly perform the encoding and the decoding processes in communications since they are not feeling well. Itong physiological noise, ito yung masakit ang katawan, hindi makapag-concentrate, may sakit, hindi makapag-concentrate, hindi mo masabi or hindi mo ma-express ang lahat ng gusto mong sabihin once you are involved in the communication process because of this physiological noise. It has nothing to do with the physical noise. Physiological siya kasi yung body aches or sickness, yan yung mga samples ng physiological noise. Another form is the psychological noise. It can come in the form of worries, problems, and anxieties. Imagine the speaker who is bombarded with problems or is so worried or anxious. Hindi siya makapag-isip ng maaari niyang isagot or maaari niyang iambag sa komunikasyon or sa pakikipag-communicate really because he or she is having this particular noise. Ang tawag dyan, psychological noise. One is unable to concentrate on the message, kaya maapektuhan yung entire communication process. Another form of noise is the semantic noise. This comes from the language used in the communication process. Language ang ingay dito na tinutukoy. If a language used in communication process or in communicating with other people is not familiar to the either of the people involved in the process, the communication may likely fail. For instance, a foreigner is asking for directions from you and both of you do not understand each other's language. Therefore, the communication will fail. Di kayo nagkakaintindihan There's noise there, and the noise present there is the semantic noise. Another example for this type of noise is the use of highfalutin words or words that are not understandable to another person involved in the communication process. Yung masyadong malalalim na salita na ginagamit, akala mo galing na galing sa'yo yung mga listeners mo o yung mga receivers mo. Akala mo bilib na bilib sa'yo. Yun pala hindi ka naiintindihan kasi you are fond of using those deep words or highfalutin words na tinatawag. This will not make the message clear and will only confuse the destination or the receivers of the message. Tsaka imagine, you're a Bicolano speaking to a Cebuano na hindi ka familiar sa dialekto ng mga taga Cebu at ang Cebuano naman ay hindi ka familiar sa dialekto ng isang Bicolano. Would you be able to understand each other? Of course not. Very little yung chance na magkaintindihan kayo. There's noise there, and the noise is called a semantic noise. So having discussed the complete process of communication, it is also important to learn more about the elements of communication. Elements. The elements of communication are the components that make the communication process possible. Ano ba yung mga bumubuo sa communication process? These are called the elements. Learning about and understanding these elements will allow one to get a better picture of the communication process and how it works. Here are the 5 basic elements of communication. The first is the participants. Participants are the communicators, us. They can be both senders and receivers. Why can they be both senders and receivers? Pwedeng maging sender siya, kanina sender siya, ngayon receiver siya. Ngayon sender naman siya, naging receiver siya. Kasi nga, communication is a continuous process. Nagpapalitan ng roles during the conversation basta't nagbigay ang isa sa kanila na feedback. Another element is the context. It refers to the interrelated conditions that affect the message. Okay, to help you better understand what context is all about, o contexto, I have here the different factors that are included in the context. The first is the physical context. It refers to the place, time, environment, and distance between communicators. For example, the way you communicate with your sibling when there is no one around may be different from the way you communicate with each other when other people are around. So that affects the context or the physical context. It shows the physical context. Di ba pag kayo lang sa bahay, baka yung way ng pag-uusap nyo, nagpapaluan pa kayo. But it's very different when you are in public. Hindi nyo naman pwedeng gawin sa public yung ginagawa nyo pag nasa private place kayo, just like at home. Another factor under context is the social context. This refers to the relationship of the communicators. Like the way you communicate with a person of authority that you have only just met. For example, is different from the way you speak with someone who has been a close friend of yours for years. Magkaiba yon. Social status ang pinag-uusapan. Like, ang pakikipag-usap mo ba sa teacher ay kaparehas ang pakikipag-usap mo sa best friend mo? Or ang pakikipag-usap mo sa barangay chairman nyo ay parehas ang pakikipag-usap nyo sa magulang mo or sa mama mo or papa mo? So that has something to do with the social context. Another context is the psychological context. It refers to the moods and feelings of the communicators. Think about the times when your mood or feelings caused you to communicate differently. When you are sad or angry, for example, you might say things that you would not say if you were happy. Diba? Magkaibang mood, magkaibang feelings, magkaiba yung pamamaraan ng pakikipag-communicate. Just like talking to your classmate or for a friend. O pag nasa bad mood ka, iba yung sagot mo. Or minsan nga hindi ka na sumasagot. Like, kung maganda ang mood mo, lahat ng tanong niya kahit hindi importante, sinasagot mo, dinadagdagan mo pa, or ikaw pa nag-i-initiate ng pakikipag-usap. So, that has something to do with your psychological or the psychological context. Another context is the cultural context. This includes the beliefs and norms of the participants. Dito naman tayo sa mga paniniwala. This comes into play when you are speaking with someone who is of a different gender, different age, different social status, different religion, or different nationality. When speaking with an exchange student, for example, from Japan, for example, you may need to explain some Filipino terms you use in a conversation, terms that you do not need to explain to a fellow Filipino. So that has something to do with the context. Bakit bawal dito sa amin ang ganito? Bakit pinagbabawal yung ganito ganyan? Or bakit binavalue namin dito sa amin yung ganito and so forth? So that has something to do with the cultural context. And that is an important element also in the communication process. Okay, let's continue with the third element of communication. The message. This is the main point of having communication. The message. The message is the main idea or information that the sender or the speaker would like to convey to the receiver or the destination. It is important for the message to be stated clearly and in a way that is understandable to the receiver. So there's no point of having conversation kung wala namang mensahe na gusto mong i-share o iparating. Another important element of communication is the channel. Channel is the means or ways of delivering the message. Paraan ng pagdi-deliver ng message. It can be a face-to-face conversation. It can be through a letter, email, or mga informal chats, a phone call, or through the use of social media platforms. One important element of communication is the feedback. This refers to the response of the receiver. This helps the sender of the message determine whether the message was understood by the receiver. Doon mo lang malalaman na naintindihan ng receiver mo ang message ang message mo bilang speaker kung nagbigay siya ng feedback. The simple way of nodding, yung pagtango, that is an indication that the message was understood by the receiver. So if the participants of the conversation continue giving feedback, sabi ko nga kanina, the flow of communication continues. That's what makes it continuous. That what makes the process continuous. And that's all for this video, my valued learners. Thank you for listening and watching. Bye.